A tragic event has once again highlighted the ongoing crisis in the English Channel. On Tuesday, 12 migrants, including several children, lost their lives after a boat capsized during an attempted crossing from France to the UK. French authorities confirmed that 12 people, mostly from Eritrea and other African nations, tragically lost their lives. In the wake of this disaster, France is urging Britain to accept asylum claims directly from within the European Union. Hours after the tragedy, France's Interior Minister, Gerald Darmanin, placed the blame on the UK's immigration policies. He emphasised the urgent need for a new asylum agreement between the UK and the European Union, warning that without it, these dangerous crossings will continue. The Interior Minister went on to say, the solution is to establish a treaty that allows the UK and the EU, not just France and the UK, to create a casual link between asylum requests and granting asylum in the UK. Otherwise, we will be condemned to see all the small boats continue. Darmanin pointed to the desperation driving migrants to risk their lives, stating that many choose illegal crossings because they believe they can find work in the UK without proper documentation and face little risk of deportation. UK Home Secretary Yvette Cooper called the incident horrifying and deeply tragic, but reaffirmed the Labour government's commitment to tackling the smuggling networks behind these dangerous journeys. However, the likelihood of Britain agreeing to any new treaty proposed by France or the EU appears slim. She added that vital efforts to dismantle dangerous and criminal smuggler gangs and boost border security must proceed apace. Migration Watch's Dr. Mike Jones responded to the government on GB News, stating that the only way to stop the smuggling gangs would be to make their business model redundant through implementing an effective deterrent.
And Mike, this points to the fact, doesn't it, that this will just continue on and on and on until we do something serious to stop this miserable, miserable human trade.
Yeah, afternoon, Martin. This is a hugely tragic case, and unfortunately, it is just one among many. Not just in the English Channel, but also in the Black Sea, the mouth of Istanbul's Bosphorus Strait, where boat crossers have died, and also in the Mediterranean, where irregular migrants have died, making the journey from Libya, Lebanon, and Tunisia. Death, I'm afraid to say, is part and parcel of the illegal migration trade, and it is part and parcel, too, of the lax laws in Europe that encourage these people to cross in the first place, to make a dangerous journey across, choppy and unpredictable waters in tiny makeshift boats. At the end of the day, the people traffickers don't care about life and death, provided that these people have paid their fees. And unfortunately, this disgusting trade is going to continue until we start deporting people and making the people traffickers' business model redundant. But Sir Keir Starmer, I'm afraid to say, is not going to do this.
And it's well worth repeating that fact, Dr. Jones, that the people traffickers, they don't care about life and death. They care about profit. We've seen instances where a 7-year-old girl was trampled to death on a dinghy by adult men scrambling to get on, many of whom haven't paid. And it's just a lawless situation. We know the situation on the coast of France is getting worse. There have been reports this week and last week of police officers coming under sustained attacks, barrage of projectiles being thrown. Now the dinghies are taking off from canals to avoid the beaches. So the French gendarmes are chasing shadows, despite the fact we put £500 million per year their way. What can be done to stop this? Because if the people traffickers don't care about death, if the traffickers themselves only care about profit, and the people boarding these craft will take whatever risk it is they can put themselves through for the chance of getting to Britain, what do we need to do to stop this grotesque trade?
Well, ultimately, the solution to this is to make their business model redundant. How do you do that? Should you try to smash the gangs, which is what Sir Keir Starmer wants to do? You can make life uncomfortable for the gangs, but you can't smash them. Ultimately, you need a policy to detain and deport the people who arrive, because that sends a very strong signal that the euros you're spending on crossing the English Channel are going to be completely worthless.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has indicated some openness to agreements that would allow the UK to return illegal migrants to the EU countries where they first arrived. However, he has firmly rejected any deal that would see Britain accept more migrants from the EU in return. Reform UK's Richard Tice also responded to the government, stating that they had blood on their hands.
So what we're actually seeing is that having removed any form of deterrent, the numbers are increasing, and the gangs, far from being scared about the Home Secretary's promise to smash the gangs, they're actually saying this is an opportunity. The deterrent is going away. The likelihood of being granted asylum has dramatically increased under this new government, and so they're cramming these increasingly frail and fragile single-use dinghies with ever more people. It seems this dinghy, literally the bottom ripped out of it. So many people were clambering on board. And it's a very simple, legally allowable situation that has to prevail here. Both the French authorities, who are aiding and abetting criminality by allowing these boats to be sort of taxied over by the French Navy, and the British authorities have got to say, it ends. It stops now. We pick up and take back. And we know it works. We know it's legal because the Belgian authorities have done it. And on one day since being the new government, the border force under the new Labour government did exactly the same thing when a boat got into trouble. The moment we do that, this whole nightmare, these tragedies and these deaths stop within 2 to 3 weeks. And it's utterly inexcusable, unforgivable, blood on the hands of the government, the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, and all of these people who will not do this.
But Richard, how can you do that if the French won't take them back? So I assume that reform policy is to send people back, but if the French aren't willing to take them back, once they've got into UK territorial waters, is it realistic to send them back to France? We may want to do that, we may think it's a good idea, but the French have to accept them.
No, they don't. Under international maritime law, and we are a rules-based nation, and this government constantly says it complies with international law. The 1982 Convention of the Law at Sea clearly gives us that legal right to pick up and take back, and it provides a legal obligation on the French to pick up and take back. And yet no one has the courage, the guts, the leadership to read the treaty and then act upon it.
But there's always a question in international law about enforceability, because there's no court that can rule on this. And if the reality is the French aren't taking them back, I just don't see how you can compel the French to take them, that it requires their support and cooperation, and that just isn't there.
That's simply not true. And they've got two choices when it comes to it, right? If we say they're not crossing the 12-mile line and we're going to pick up and take back, which is what should happen, then the French have either got to do a deal with us and create a rapid processing centre in northern France, or they're going to shoot us. Well, they're not going to shoot us, Jacob, so they're going to do a deal with us. But this requires leadership. That's what we expect our government to do, and it requires courage. And we keep hearing from people like the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, talk about tough choices, and the Chancellor talk about tough choices. Well, this is actually quite an easy choice. It saves people's lives.
Well, Richard, thank you. I really rather like the fact that reform's policy is to retake Calais, put right the wrong that was done to Mary Tudor. Thank you.
As the UK seeks to accelerate the return of illegal migrants to countries like Iraq, Ethiopia and Vietnam, the human cost of this ongoing crisis remains heartbreakingly clear. Tuesday's tragedy is a stark reminder of the dangers faced by those seeking a better life on the other side of the Channel. With leaders from both sides of the Channel grappling for a solution, the challenge remains: how to prevent more lives from being lost in these treacherous waters. Rhys Hayward, GB News.